after it is started, can customers react in a meaningful way to what you have, after which you can begin to see how your trajectory must be altered to truly intersect with their wants and needs. It is a course in whitewater rafting, not transoceanic navigation, that is being taught in Silicon Valley, Boston, Seattle, and other high-tech strongholds. And that's just fine, until you reach the ocean, the broader domain of continuous improvement to established systems, the world of traditional business. It is here that Silicon Valley will be challenged during the coming decade. No other place on the planet has had more success in market formation and in the generation of market capitalization. But both these disciplines are forward-looking. Both imply that one can assign stock market value today to competitive advantages that must be executed against tomorrow. Silicon Valley companies have been unmatched in their ability to generate extraordinary competitive advantages that, if market valuations are to be believed, will give them above-average returns for 6, 8, 10 years to come. I, for one, believe those advantages are indeed sustainable over those periods, but only if the cultures that bred them can step up to the challenge of becoming enduring institutions. Here I pause, for I myself do not like the breathlessness of Silicon Valley. I do not like its hyper-connected communication style. I do not like its insistence on being young and hip and hot and hyped. I have this vision of Thoreau and Emerson and Whitman and Dickinson all calling out to us, all trying to wave us away from some collision course with what? I do not know, but I am nervous about it. Here is where I think the significance of Silicon Gold Rush comes in. We are indeed in the midst of a gold rush, with all the implications that phrase calls to mind. Such good fortune does limit one's options. You cannot go slowly on the way to Sutter's Mill and expect to find much when you get there. The pace is forced by the situation as much now as it was 150 years ago. And that pace, in turn, has brought into existence new patterns of wealth formation, new ways to partner and compete, new modes of recruiting, managing, and retaining employees, new ways of conceiving the employment relationship. In the context of hyper-growth markets, I believe these new modes are right on the mark, so the world around the technology industry should take note, and take notes. And after? Well, there's still a lot of here and now to get through first, but one thing is sure. The strategy of standing back, of holding these new methods in disdain, of disassociating oneself and one's enterprise from them causes failure. In business, as in football, the West Coast offense is here to stay, and the East Coast establishment and other economies around the world must absorb it and respond to it, not reject it. Reading and reacting to the ideas in this book is a great way to start. But in so doing, each of these other economies needs to find its own expression of the insights accumulated here, one that integrates traditional strength with new learning. We do not need a Silicon Prairie or Silicon Forest or Silicon Alley. Drop the silicon. We need some new element from the periodic table. As Silicon Valley pundits frequently like to note, attributing the notion to Picasso, great artists do not copy, they steal. Finally, for those of us who live and work in Silicon Valley, this book is a currency check. The ideas in it are what's happening today. If they are unfamiliar to you, get with them. If you think you've got them, you're getting jaded and you'd better look again. There are still a lot of miracles to come from Silicon Valley. Jeffrey Moore is chairman of the Chasm Group, a consulting firm in San Mateo, California, and a venture partner in Moore David Dow Ventures. He is author of Crossing the Chasm, Inside the Tornado, and The Guerrilla Game, an investor's guide to picking winners in high tech. Introduction. The New Gold Rush. In January 1848, gold nuggets were first discovered in the American River near the town of Coloma, California. The effects of that discovery were felt for decades after. It was not just a matter of the wealth generated by the mining of the precious metal itself, more than $2 billion worth before it was depleted. The gold industry caused a whole infrastructure of other industries to spring up around it, employing suppliers and partners and advisors and distributors and assayers and many others. It even hastened statehood for California. Just as important, the gold rush helped to seed the idea that it is possible, through a combination of good luck, hard work, and technology, to get rich quickly. Tens of thousands of would-be millionaires poured into California from all over the world. But very few of these miners actually struck it rich. They found that the work was tougher than they had expected, and that the chances of any individual hitting it big were very small. In 1998, 150 years later, we are experiencing a similar frenzy of commercial activity that I call the Silicon Gold Rush, meaning the industries and companies and markets that have sprung up around the essential ingredient of the digital revolution, silicon. It, too, originated in California and centers now in the companies of Silicon Valley, south of San Francisco, although there are significant outposts in areas like Seattle, Boston, New York, and Austin, Texas. Just as the California gold rush opened a whole new market and created a whole new mindset, so the Silicon Gold Rush has changed the face of American and global industry and spawned the creation of a set of industries and businesses that support and surround it. Equally as important, the companies involved in the Silicon Gold Rush structure themselves and conduct their business in substantially, even radically different ways than companies that we think of as traditional, by which I mean the divisionalized hierarchies that have been the norm in this country for many decades. The success of these silicon-based companies, from the tiniest startup to the grandfather of them all, Hewlett-Packard, has deeply influenced traditional organizations and forced them to think about and often adopt the new ways of operating. Everywhere you look today, older companies and those in traditional industries are adopting the organizational structures, business strategies, and operational methods of the Silicon Valley gang. In other words, the technology companies are changing more than the markets in which they operate. They are transforming the way America does business. In this book, I explore these new structures, strategies, and methods through the stories of 23 technology companies, most of them based in Silicon Valley itself. For a number of reasons, I have chosen a startup venture, Crossworld Software, to take a starring role in the book. The story of this fledgling corporation contains many of the elements that make the technology industry so exciting and instructive to watch. They include the scramble for financing, the glitzy launch events, the feverish jamming to move the initial product from design to manufacture and into the hands of paying customers, the spin cycle, the combination of self-promotion and media hype that can create a perception of momentum even before there is actual movement, the colorful cast of characters, the non-traditional work environment, the high stakes and big money, the meteoric growth, the constant risk of failure, radical change, takeover, buyout, and burnout. I have been following the Silicon scene and the companies that compose it for more than a decade, first as a business writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, and over the past 6 years with Upside magazine. It has been fascinating and thought-provoking to get to know these companies intimately through repeated visits to their sites, interviews with key players both inside and outside the companies, and through my research into their pasts, their performance, and their prospects. My goal for this book has been to synthesize what I have observed over the past decade and what I have learned in more than 100 in-depth interviews with executives of the 23 companies and with other knowledgeable observers of high technology. The result is 10 chapters and a conclusion, each of which focuses on a key issue that pertains to all of these companies to a greater or lesser degree, and that also has relevance to businesses and organizations outside the world of technology.